Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Windy City Breakdown. Tony Andracki here, joined by Kyle Millinowisch, and Andy Martinez is doing his tour of the U.S., so he is out this week. We have Zoe Grossman in, writer at Cubs on SI. First of all, Zoe, thanks for joining us and coming in as a co-host. 2 weeks ago, you were on as a guest, so how does it feel to be upgraded and take Andy's place here? Wally Pippin.
Feels great. I wish I was on vacation like Andy, to be honest, but,
Yeah.
I'll take this. It feels like a lot has changed in the last 2 weeks, so feels like a completely different team, so excited to excited to talk about
Where is Andy?
He's in Florida or something now. I don't know. He was in Kansas City for the World Cup
it.
2 weeks ago. Um, yeah, he's been all over the continental U.S. Must be
It's funny.
nice.
Zoe was asking me beforehand where Andy is. I was like, I don't fucking know.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. He just told us this week. He's like, I forgot to tell you guys I can't record him in Florida, and I'm like, I didn't even know you were going to Florida, but whatever, man.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, just leaving us high and dry. Anyways, the Cubs have not been leaving their fans high and dry, so that's what we call a segue in this industry. They have been really good lately, like you said, Zoe. From when you were just on a few weeks ago, like things have changed quite a bit about this team. Like they've been on a roll. It's been over a month or almost a month since they really played poorly. They've lost one series in that time. They're 6-1-1 in their last 8 series. The only series they lost was this past holiday weekend to the Cardinals. And they have a couple sweeps in there, and potentially, as we record this on Thursday morning, 3 sweeps in that span. They had a 4-game sweep over the Mets, a 3-game sweep over the Padres at Wrigley, and now they have the potential, with the game pushed up to Thursday afternoon, to sweep the Orioles in Baltimore. So they're 18-6 overall in that stretch. It's just been like this crazy roller coaster. But Zoe, we'll start with you. Like, what do you make of what you've seen from the Cubs over this last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I feel like half of what we talked about last time was how bad Dansby Swanson had been.
Oh,
Yeah,
And that
so
was
bad.
and it's crazy because, like, I think it was, like, a week later, he went on his crazy tear and, started putting up Sammy Sosa numbers for whatever reason, which is
literally
crazy,
Sammy
and
Sosa numbers.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally Sammy Sosa numbers, and yeah, I think that maybe that was the key. I don't know. We talked about how you couldn't take him out of the lineup even when he wasn't hitting. Um, and I think that was a big reason of why, the Cubs were struggling, offensively for so long was because, they had to keep a guy who's hitting 183 in the lineup every day. But yeah, I mean, suddenly he can hit everything he sees. So I think that's probably the main reason. Also, PCA has been crazy. But yeah, overall, just they've looked like a lot better of an offensive team, which I think we expected them to kind of bounce back like that because that's kind of how this whole season has been. But yeah, it's felt like watching a different team.
Yeah, the Dansby stuff is nuts because like he crushed the ball obviously a couple weeks ago in New York. He had that huge doubleheader and huge series, but like you said, the 26 RBI in 10-game stretch set the Cubs franchise record. Sammy Sosa was the only guy who came even close during that time. I think that was in June of 98, or yeah, was it June of 98, Kyle, that when he hit the 20 homers? So yeah, Sosa had like this MLB record type month, and Dansby came close to him for a couple weeks stretch, just in terms of driving in runs. It was nuts. I mean, just absolutely crazy how he went about it. And even now, like it was not Monday, Tuesday's game, he had like that really big hit that gave him an insurance run after the Orioles came coming back. It was a nice single to right field. Like, I feel like he started using the whole field a little bit better. He made an incredible play in last night and Wednesday night's game defensively. So it's like, this is exactly why, like you said, Zoe, we talked about why you cannot run away from Dansby Swanson and why you have to keep playing him, because if the Cubs want to be the best version of themselves, it's Dansby playing and knowing that at some point the back of the baseball card is going to show up. Now we're still waiting for that from Alex Bregman, right? But like, the back of the baseball card will show up for these guys, and that's usually what baseball, how that plays out. It, as Counsell put it after Dansby's like huge game, that 3-homer game against the Padres when the Cubs scored 23 runs, he was like, he had the worst stretch of his career, and then he's had the best stretch of his career. Like, it's just the way that you draw it up is different. Instead of him being this consistent player to get to this point where, he's on pace for 20 to 25 homers and 90 to 95 RBI, they all came at once after like a 2-month span of it not happening. But yeah, I don't know. It has been crazy. But Kyle, what have you thought about either Dansby or just the way the last few weeks have gone for the Cubs?
Dansby's recent stretch is like the perfect. I don't know if is euphemism the right word. Is that the correct
Microcosm.
microcosm?
Euphemism means I think mostly
Suggesting.
sexual, like
Yeah.
innuendo.
Sexual?
Well,
Yeah.
mostly. I mean, that's how people use it. Yeah.
Oh no, never mind.
Yes, microcosm.
Microcosm. It's a perfect microcosm of the Cub season, right? Like he is ice
It is.
cold, then
Mhm.
he's like schizophrenic. Then he just went like ballistic
Yeah.
hot. And then in between, and even last week, I was saying, so this was Zoe, when we recorded last week, it was the game before he went off against the Padres. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, he had that hot series against the Mets, and then in his 5 games since, he's 2 for 20 with like 8 strikeouts. And then he went
That's Dansby.
ballistic again. And it's
Mhm.
kind of the same sort of thing the Cubs this season have gone. 2 10-game winning streaks, 10-game losing streak. Like it's what's the saying from Forrest Gump? Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of what it is with this Cubs team. I mean, hell, on Wednesday they won 23-3, and then on Friday they lost 17-1. I mean, it's like you turn on the game, you're like, who the fuck knows what's gonna happen? It's Russian roulette, but it's fun.
True.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I'm curious, Kyle, from your perspective as more of like the fan stuff. I mean, how is it to kind of watch and ride that roller coaster?
I'll tell you what, and these last, I'll say 3 weeks plus, yeah, it's fun to ride the roller coaster, but the one thing that really is like, I can't miss is anytime PCA's taking an at bat. He is so good right now. It is unbelievable. And I know we'll get into that later, but from my perspective, it kind of reminds me of like when Chris Bryant or Schwarber were hitting in, 2015, 2016, where it's like, I don't want to miss an at bat. And his is almost, you don't want to miss the at bats after if he's on base because he's going to steal. He's just the most fun player to watch. But overall, and kind of getting more into the nitty gritty of it, it really has been great watching them these past few weeks. Winning cures all, but watching how Craig has handled this pitching staff is kind of, I mean, I don't want to say miraculous, but you have to tip your cap to with the arms that are in the bullpen. I mean, like, is it Tyler Ferguson? This guy's pitching meaningful innings late in the game, and he was DFA'd by the A's earlier this year. Obviously, they just picked up Pomeranz. Who else? Bryce Wilson, David Peterson. These guys that nobody was on the roster a month ago, and they're all pitching meaningful innings. I know David Peterson, the starter, but just in general, like how Craig's been maneuvering the bullpen. The one thing I found interesting was how on Tuesday he used Jacob Webb in the 7th and Trent Thornton to close the game in the 9th. And then on Wednesday he flipped it. He used, I believe, Trent Thornton in the 7th and then Jacob Webb in the 9th. So it was just, it's how he's mixing and matching with the bullpen. There's no defined rules. It's like, hey, anybody can close. I thought, to be honest, I thought he was going to get a Jake Woodford guy close. And like at this point, fuck it, maybe. Like everybody hurt. So overall, it really has been fun. And how Craig is been able to maneuver what's going on has just been fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it has been absolutely nuts with all the pitching injuries. It's been such a topic of conversation all year, right? Like we've talked about it a lot. But yeah, it's nuts, really. Even like you talked about Tyler Ferguson. So the Cubs, after he was DFA'd by the A's in May, then the Cubs recalled him in early June, optioned him down 3 days later, recalled him back 4 days later, optioned him back down 3 days later, recalled him 12 days later, optioned him back the next day, and then recalled him on June 27th. And all of a sudden he's in high leverage opportunities to, he's pitching the 8th inning, he's pitching the 9th inning in a big game, he's throwing 2 innings. Like it's been nuts, but it's like, that's what Counsell has said is like with pitching injuries. And there was that stretch there, 2 weeks ago where it was like every single day of the week, there was 1 or 2 pitchers going on the IL. There was Edward Cabrera. There was, Hobie Milner all of a sudden has appendicitis. There's Ethan Roberts is on the IL. Like some of these guys who have been a big part of their bullpen and obviously of the rotation, and they've needed to do everything they can, Band-Aids to piece things together. And here they are 4 days from a reprieve from the All-Star break where they can feel a little bit better. I mean, Jameson Tyone could be back right after the All-Star break. Daniel Palencia may not be far behind. He's going to start getting off the mound, they said, after the All-Star break. Edward Cabrera still feels like he's a few weeks away. I mean, considering he'd have to ramp up too, I feel like mid-August is a good timeline for him. But yeah, they're in a pretty good spot. And after the All-Star break, all of a sudden there's like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks until the trade deadline, where we'll talk about that a bunch more later too. But all of a sudden, like, the Cubs could have some options and figure out, ways to piece this pitching staff together. But so what have you thought of the way this pitching staff has made things work? Jacob Webb really struggled in April. He was probably the most underrated bullpen addition in the offseason. And now he's their most important pitcher. And all these other guys were non-factors. I think every single other guy in the bullpen except for Thielbar was not on the opening day roster, not thought to be a part of this mix. And all of a sudden they're having to get big outs in some close games.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle said he wasn't sure if you could say miraculous, but I honestly think it is kind of miraculous what the pitching staff has been able to do. I've seen chatter online of, if the Cubs make the playoffs, like Craig Counsell should be, in consideration for manager of the year just because of how he's been able to move forward with, basically just a bunch of guys that, it's just like a patchwork of a bullpen. Yeah, I mean, things were a little bit shaky yesterday with Thielbar. I mean, that was a little weird to watch. Felt like he was throwing batting practice a little bit, but I mean, when when one of the guys is struggling, it's another random guy is going to step up. Guys like Ferguson, guys like Trent Thornton, Jacob Webb. Like, I don't know, it feels like it's a quintessential Jed bullpen, but it's also something that the Cubs have somehow been able to manage better than what I've seen before, with what they have. Yeah, so miraculous is the word that I would use for how this bullpen has and how the pitching staff has operated.
I think miraculous would be the word that we would all use for PCA's stretch too. And Kyle, you alluded to that earlier. Like, he's become must-watch TV, I think, clearly for Cubs fans, but I would argue for baseball fans in general, right? Like, it's him and Shohei, I think, among the most exciting players in baseball right now to watch. It's everything that PCA does defensively. He hits 2 homers again last night. I keep waiting for him to slow down a bit. And not because I think he's not capable of this. I think he is. And we saw that for 3 months last year before the All-Star break, right? Like, we know what he is capable of, and he's capable of these like hottest stretches. But this hot stretch is particularly hot, even for him. Like, so since May 22nd, we're talking a full month and a half, 42 games, he is hitting 374. He's a 472 on base percentage. So he's getting on base almost half of his plate appearances. 748 slugging over a month and a half. That's a 1.2 OPS. 16 homers, 11 stolen bases in that time. It's remarkable. I feel like it's also remarkable that he's been hitting leadoff and he's only scored 34 runs in those 42 games, but that's a byproduct of the Cubs offense not. Probably Alex Bregman is huge because most of that stretch Bregman has been hitting directly behind him. Yeah. But I think it's just a byproduct of like the Cubs not driving in runs. When a guy is a 472 on base percentage for a month and a half in 42 games, I would expect probably 50 runs, not fewer than 1 per game, especially the way that he steals bases and can fly around the base paths. It's not like Miguel Amaya getting on base at a 472 clip hitting in the 8 or 9 hole, right? So, but yeah, like, the power continues to show up, even when pitchers are pitching around him, which they have done at times, to get to Bregman seemingly in situations because Bregman has not come through a bunch this year. He's taking his walks, and then when he is getting his pitches, he's not missing them. And a month and a half of a hot stretch like this is really, really impressive. And Sprea's overall line I forget, I was just looking it up before. His OPS plus is
high,
158. So he's 58% better than the average big league player. His on base is 386. Like, I never thought this deep into a season with 40% left to play that PCA's on base percentage would be 386. Zoe, what has it been like from your perspective, just watching this from PCA and how to me at least, I'm curious your thoughts. Like, how does this stack up to last year, his like 2.5 month stretch? I feel like this is an even different player and a far superior player than what he did last year when he was on pace for like a 40-40 season for most of the year.
No, I mean, I think 100% I feel like he's a completely even different player than he was last year. That's why I feel like this hot streak feels so much different than the first half last year, because last year you could feel like, you could almost anticipate that, yeah, like maybe this is gonna drop off because, he was striking out a lot, wasn't walking a lot. But now, I mean, I'm looking here, his walk rate is up 6%, which is it's crazy. I mean, he's already walked
Huge.
almost twice as much as he walked all of last season, and I think that's been the main thing is him being a disciplined hitter. I mean, that was kind of like almost the final puzzle piece that he needed, to be an elite hitter, and that's what he's doing. He's also swinging, at pitches out of the zone. I guess out of zone swing percentage is down 5.6%, which is also crazy. I mean, he's not chasing, he's waiting for his pitch, and if he doesn't get a pitch that he likes, he takes his walks. And I don't know that for me it's a sign of his maturity, and I think that's really the main reason why he's been so good, and it's also a main reason why I don't see him dropping off, the way that he did last year. I think he's a lot more a sustainable player, and I think that this is something that he can sustain for the rest of the season, just because he's made like significant, foundational changes to the way that he approaches hitting, which is, yeah, super super important for him as a player.
Tony, when we're talking, mute your Muppet.
It's doing the echo thing again?
Absolutely.
God. All right. Sorry, Kyle, PCA thoughts, I'll go on mute.
Thank God you're on mute. So I was looking up, obviously this is PCA's second trade time, going 2020 before the All-Star break. Chris Kamka had a good tweet. He MLB players with consecutive 2020 seasons before the All-Star break. PCA these last 2 years, and Alfonso Soriano in 02-03. So that's sick. And then I was looking up players to have 20 homers and 20 RBI, or 20 RBI, 20 homers and 20 stolen bases in the team's first 100 games since 2000. There's quite a bit of names, but just here's the list. So PCA these past 2 years: Jose Ramirez, Shohei Ohtani, Ronald Acuna Jr. twice, Corbin Carroll, Fernando Tatis, Christian Yelich, Matt Kemp, Ian Kinsler, Grady Sizemore, Soriano, Hanley Ramirez, Bobby Abreu, and Vlad. So like these are all bona fide studs, right? So then that got me to thinking yesterday, after his second home run, did the Cubs fleece PCA with that contract extension? Like, I mean, I know they technically only bought out 2 years of free agency, but at the same time, like, can you imagine what he would get this offseason? I mean, I know he's, again, not a free agent, but what did he sign? A 6-year, 100, what was it, 111, 140? What was his deal? Cubs are signing 150. You could unmute yourself when you talk. You're muted.
Forgot I was muted. Rookie mistake, Tone. 115.
115.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did the Cubs fleece PCA? Is PCA actually underpaid? I mean, look at his WAR and then Shohei's WAR. Similar. Shohei's getting what? I mean, I guess $2 million a year, but $70 million a year. It's pretty impressive what Pete's doing overall.
Yeah, so you talk about WAR. PCA Fangraphs last year 5.4 WAR. He's already at 5.8 with like 41% of the season remaining this year. Now I know like WAR is not a counting stat, so it's possible he could go backwards a bit, but pretty unlikely, I think, with his defense. I don't think he'll, if he stays at this stretch where he gets on base 47% of the time and has a 1.2 OPS the rest of the season, he's going to have an 11 or 12 WAR. But I don't know that that's fully sustainable for the rest of the year. But still, this is a guy that we're talking like, even on Baseball Reference, he has a league-leading 5.6 WAR. Last year, he's at 5.9. Like, this is a guy who has taken the steps like you just laid out, Zoe. Like, it's everything. He has done everything right. Shohei, for example, has a 2.9 WAR on Baseball Reference. So PCA has double the WAR than Shohei does. Shohei had 9 WAR in 2024 that led the league 2 years ago, by the way. But
9?
Shohei, 9.
Holy shit, he's a cyborg.
Yeah, he is. And like Bobby Witt Jr. had a 9 WAR, I think, in 2024 as well. I'm looking up what Shohei's is on Fangraphs right now. He is at 3 on Fangraphs. So, and he was at 8.9 in 2024. So yeah, so PCA is like dwarfing Shohei in terms of the WAR right now, which is I know only one stat, but that's Shohei is having a really good year offensively still, a 939 OPS. His OPS plus is also 158, exactly the same as PCA's, and he's pitching. I mean, his pitching numbers are worthy of being the Cy Young just on that alone. He's going to win MVP, but these are two guys who are right up there. And it was at this point last year, going in the All-Star break, that there was a real conversation of Shohei versus PCA for MVP. But like you said, Zoe, you kind of had this feeling that it was going to drop off for PCA. I remember Counsell even talked about it, and he wasn't like demeaning or diminishing anything that PCA had said, but like he's like Shohei was on pace to, he's coming off 50-50 season. He was on pace to do all this stuff. And it's like, you look at what Shohei was doing and the underlying numbers and the chase rate and strikeout and walk and stuff, and you're like, this is going to sustain. With PCA last year at this time, I think we all knew that the other shoe is going to drop. It doesn't feel like the other shoe is going to drop. And his defense has even gotten better as well this year. I honestly like a 10 or 11 WAR season is in play absolutely for PCA at some point in the near future, and possibly at some point this year if he continues down this stretch. Zoe, I mean, put that into like words. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, sorry. Before we jump off Shohei, tell me how he's only worth 2.7 WAR when he's hitting 290 with 20 home runs, and then he's got a 179 with 14 starts. How does that equate to 2.7 worth of WAR? I feel like that's infinity.
Is it because he has pitching WAR? Does he have a separate pitching WAR or no?
You know what? I'm not 100%. That's possible that goes into play. So if he has 2.9 offensive WAR, 2.7 pitching WAR, that could make sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that might be it. So then PCA is not dwarfing him, but still PCA and Shohei are right up there in terms of WAR. That is weird. I guess that does make sense, that you'd count Shohei's offensive WAR as like one thing and his pitching WAR as another. But PCA is a two-way player in a different way in that he plays defense and Shohei doesn't.
But like on their baseball reference page on their standard batting, so PCA's is 5.6 right now, and then Shohei's is 2.9. So this is terrible podcasting right now. But is that just equating like their offensive capabilities? Because that almost wouldn't make sense. We need Andy. Andy would just be like, you guys are idiots. This is what's right.
I think that is the case. Yeah, I think, and that makes sense. I was surprised at how low Shohei's WAR was. So I mean, it's just all these models don't really know what to do with the unicorn player like Shohei. Like that's really what it is. He breaks these models because they're set up for one type of player and not two. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know
Sorry,
exactly
Zoe.
like how this.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. What was the question?
But Zoe, just like contextualize for us that like PCA is on the verge or seemingly on the cusp of like a 10 or 11 WAR season, which would just be, would be in like Shohei categories from the last couple of years. Like, what does that mean to think of that? And to think of, even in Kyle's point of like, he's only getting 115 million through 2020 or through 2032.
2031.
Like,
or somewhere around there.
What'd you say?
I thought it was 2031, but yeah, like 2030-ish.
2030, yeah. So, but think about that, Zoe. Like, what does that mean for the Cubs to have a player and any player put up a 10-11 WAR season?
No, I wouldn't, even stray away from calling him, a generational kind of player just because of how, it's kind of like Ohtani in the way that, what Ohtani does is kind of, it's hard to, compare him to anyone else and how he's a two-way player. I mean, PCA is, and like you said, he's a two-way player in his own right, being, a incredible defender, one of, or if not the best, in MLB, and couple that with now, being one of the best hitters in MLB as well. I mean, you get a generational player, and the Cubs, he's kind of one of a kind, and the Cubs haven't really had somebody like that in so long. I mean, maybe you could say like, the Cubs, 2016 core, Chris Bryant. But then again, like, and it's still kind of, it feels different. Like it feels like they have their own unicorn in a sense. Like it really does feel that way. Like he's a superstar, and yeah, like you said, like Kyle said, it feels like the Cubs fleeced him a little bit. Just I feel like the Mets would turn around and give PCA like $1 billion, like if they still had him.
Yeah.
Like
That's
I
what
don't
and
know.
that's what it's like how shitty do the Mets feel that they got 2 months of Javi Baez and then traded away, 2 decades of
Yeah,
potentially, like, one of the best players of this era,
yeah.
right?
Well, Keith Hernandez summed it up on that broadcast when the Cubs were in New York of watching. He was just watching PCA run. It wasn't even like a great defensive play or a home run or anything like that. It was just PCA scoring from first, I think, on a double. And it was just like, whatever, what do you say? Like, man, the Mets really messed this up or whatever. Or it's difficult, like, watching him play. And I made the point, I was at CHGO the other night, and I was like, I feel like the PCA trade broke the trade deadline around the league because all of a sudden teams don't want to part with their top prospects because they don't want to be the Mets watching PCA blossom into a star. And they, I mean, that's really it. Like, teams don't want to give up a PCA type prospect for a pure rental. And guys like Tarek Skubal and some of these other guys out there, Freddie Peralta, these guys are pure rentals. They're about to hit the free agent market, and Skubal will probably reset the market for starting pitchers in a few months or whenever, depending on lockout, depending. But yeah, PCA is just, he's incredible. And it was Pat Hughes. I was listening to the radio last night. Hughes was just kind of like waxing poetic a little bit about and putting in a perspective what PCA has done. And he's like, in all my days of like watching baseball, how many guys, he was asking Ryan Coomer this, how many guys have the whole package, the whole 5-tool skill set? Like, Kyle, you mentioned a bunch of guys since 2000 over the last 25 plus years that are 5-tool players. Vladdy, had everything, especially the arm and hit ability. But like, how many guys have the 5-tool skill set as elite as what PCA has? Now that he's adding batting average into the mix, on base percentage, drawing walks. Like, in baseball, I feel like right now, him and Bobby Witt are the only two guys that I would like put in that category. And Witt had a 10.5 WAR season on Fangraphs 2 years ago in 2024. Like, to me, it's sort of those two guys as like the most toolsy players. And Shohei obviously is a unicorn differently because he has the pitching. But I mean, Kyle, can you think of another guy in baseball right now, but also just in recent memory? Like, Pat Hughes brought up Willie Mays. Like, that's how far back he went. But a guy who has like just the tools that jump off the page the way PCA is.
Yeah, I almost feel like what PCA is doing now is what Cubs fans expected Alfonso Soriano to be when he signed in 7, right? To be this like 2020 40-40 guy routinely, and obviously he wasn't. In terms of guys now, I mean, you're right. I mean, you could say Acuna, he's a 5-tool player. He's obviously suffered from a couple ACL injuries. Another guy that jumps out is Corbin Carroll. I love watching him play. Him and PCA to me are very similar, but I mean, even right now, would you say Corbin Carroll? I mean, yeah, maybe recency bias and Cubs bias are playing a big factor here, but like the last month plus, would you take Corbin Carroll over PCA? Absolutely not. So
No.
it is in such rare air. And yeah, and going off what Pat Hughes was saying, I mean, I can't speak to Willie Mays. Never seen him play. Um, I know he made that one great over the shoulder catch at the Polo Ground, but I
Yeah.
mean, if he's defining or classifying PCA in that type of territory, then who am I to ignore that or argue with that? Pat Hughes is a god for me. So yeah,
The Corbin Carroll comparison is good, but I think Carroll doesn't have the defense that's even close to the PCA aspect of it, right? And
yeah,
he
probably.
very similar like
And he
offensive
plays right.
profiles. Yeah, yeah. Similar offensive profiles and like the speed and stuff, but the defense is the one big tool that Carroll lacks. And that's actually PCA's best tool. We talk about him offensively, but he is, like you said, Zoe, probably the best defensive player in baseball. But Zoe, can you think of another player, even in recent memory, all the time that you've grown up watching baseball and stuff, that where like 5 tools jump off the page the way PCA's are?
I mean, on it, like for real, like literally the only player I can think of is Bobby Witt Jr. And the funny thing, I don't even how much is he making? Like $288 million. Like it goes back to like,
Oh yeah.
the contract thing. Like they threw boatloads of money at him, but no, it's really, I'm trying to think. I would have to go and look, but he's really like the first one and I know he's recent, but it's kind of like a newer generation type of player that like what PCA and Bobby Witt are. Like I feel like it's the that kind of player profile. Like was that like even really prevalent? Like I mean, I feel like baseball was just so different even, 15 years ago. Like it was just such a different game. Like they feel like these are two players that are kind of like defining this new generation of player, in my opinion. I don't know. That's just from what I can see.
No, I agree for sure. Funny, I was just looking at Bobby Witt as you were talking. I forgot his brother-in-law is James Russell.
James
former
Russell.
Cubs. Yeah, that's crazy. I knew that fact before, but I totally fallen out of my head. But you're right, Zoe. I think these guys like are defining this new age baseball, and it's funny. I think of PCA seems to rise at the moment a lot. I know we talked all last season about how he always seemed to hit home runs in all the like national games the Cubs played. And then, he had that 2-homer game in the WBC. But like he was hitting, I think, 8 in the WBC. And this year he started hitting like 4 or 5 for the Cubs. Then he dropped down all the way to 8th. It's like he's a guy who's he's had these like wild swings and like vacillations hitting in the order. Now he's hitting leadoff. I imagine he'll probably hit leadoff for the rest of the season. The Cubs don't really have another option there. But we'll see how quickly these things change. But it's nuts, really, like how this stretch, I feel like we've been talking about it for this whole month and a half, like we collectively, media and blogs and podcasts and everything, sports talk radio, but like it still doesn't do it justice. He's just on another level. But so we talked a little bit about the trade deadline too. So switch gears a bit to that. It's a little under a month away. About 3.5 weeks away here. We talked about these wild swings, this roller coaster of the team. The Cubs were the best team in baseball for 6 weeks, the worst team in baseball for 4 weeks. And now I don't know exactly if they're the best, but they're one of the top 3 teams in baseball over the last 3 weeks. Zoe, how much do you go, like knowing that, how much if you're Jed, do you go all in on this year's trade deadline, understanding that anything is possible? Each game is like a box of chocolates, as Kyle said. Like you could win by 20 and lose by 16, or you could have another terrible stretch, or maybe you actually solidify and stabilize and become one of the best teams in baseball down the stretch. But like Zoe, how do you think things through if you're in Jed's front office?
Yeah, obviously with the way the Cubs have been playing, we have really no clue what they're going to look like on August 3rd or whenever the trade deadline is. I mean, they could lose 10 games again and be like, oh shoot, we need to sell, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah.
With that being said, it's possible. But with that being said, I wouldn't necessarily go all in either. I mean, I'm expecting it to kind of be what it was last year. With trying to piece together, I mean, and at this point what they need is pitching, and they're going to end up having to do what they did last year of kind of trying to find these like under the radar arms. I mean, I would love for them to go and get like Joe Ryan or someone like that, but we don't know how much that's going to cost, number one, and number two, I don't think the Cubs aren't going to get rid of their top 5 prospects for a pitcher. That's not going to happen. They didn't do it last year. And top of frontline starters are going to cost a lot again. So I think Jed's going to have to end up looking at the margins again and trying to find bullpen guys and maybe a starter that can won't break the bank or cost them their future as he said it last year.
Yeah. Kyle, what do you think? How much you go all in if you're Jed?
So I'm looking at like just the standings overall, and obviously with the expanded wild.
Where me again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
That's
I couldn't
so
hear you
weird.
for a second. I have no idea what's going on. No, I got nothing going on. I don't know. I think my headphones are acting up a bit. I'll mute you. Make your very salient point.
Yeah, thank you. So like roughly, if you say teams are like 5 games out of the second or the last wild card spot at the trade deadline, for the most part, you would say those teams probably wouldn't be selling, correct? Yeah, obviously it's a case by case basis, but just roughly, let's use 5 games back as a number here. So there's only 2 teams in the AL that are more than 5 games back at the second wild card, the Royals and the Angels. And then the NL, there's 4 teams that are more than 5 games back. The Reds, Mets, Giants, and Rockies. So just, yeah, not every team is going to be buying. A lot of teams are going to be standing pat, maybe, selling and buying. But at the same time, the point I'm trying to make is there's definitely less teams selling. So the price for these pitchers is going up, right? Like we saw what the price was for Michael Soroka last year, right? They traded, was it Ronnie Cruz, one of their, who's looks like he might be a pretty decent player moving forward. You mentioned Joe Ryan. Would the Twins even part ways with him? They're a half game out of the last wild card spot. Yeah, they might not be in win now mode, but at the same time, like, are you going to trade your best pitcher when you're a half game out of the potentially making the playoffs? The Royals, they're interesting. Obviously, I know the Cubs were connected to Seth Lugo last year. I've seen Michael Wacha's name thrown around. I don't know what their contracts are like, so I'm just pretty much stealing information that I'm seeing on Twitter. But a name that I've seen on Twitter that I think is intriguing is from the Mets. It's not Freddie Peralta. I think it'd be Clay Holmes. I think the price would be, and I'd love your guys' thoughts on this. I think the price would be a little cheaper than Freddie. And the one thing that I think stands out about Clay Holmes is his ground ball rate. Amongst starting pitchers this year with at least 9 starts, because that's what he's made. He's got a 55.3% ground ball rate, which is it's 4th in the bigs. And obviously that was kind of the thought behind acquiring David Peterson, right? He induces a lot of ground balls. The Cubs have one of the best infield defenses in the league. So positive progression, as some would say. I think that would be somewhat of an ideal trade target. Again, I don't know what the cost is for any of these guys, so don't even ask me. But looking at the numbers and what past pitchers have cost, maybe that's the route they go. But you're right. Like, the Cubs definitely need pitching here. You're on mute.
The cost thing is really interesting, like, because that's part of what I was saying before is the PCA kind of broke the trade deadline, because that was the teams that are selling want to get a PCA type prospect in return. And that was what the price was last year for Zoe. Like you mentioned Joe Ryan, but it was also Mackenzie Gore and Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera, and I don't know how many talks he was in with other teams, but these guys that were controllable pitchers that were more frontline starters, or if not necessarily an ace, maybe like a 1-2 range. The price from the Cubs perspective was like a Shaw or Cade Horton, and in some cases possibly both. And then plus a Kevin Alcantara or something, or another lower level prospect, it's insane. I mean, the Cubs last year were trying to add to their big league team, and they couldn't take away Shaw, who was their starting third baseman at the time, and Cade Horton, who was their best pitcher at the trade deadline, and then obviously the final 2 months of the season. So it's interesting that was what the price was, but then also none of those guys got moved. And then in the offseason, Mackenzie Gore gets traded, Edward Cabrera gets traded. And also, I mean, Gore has had like a 5 ERA since the trade deadline last year. Like, he hasn't been very good this year. He was horrible in the second half last year. So that's some of the risk of trading for some of these guys. But I am really curious what the price is going to be, Kyle. And yeah, guys like maybe Waka and Clay Holmes would cost less than a Freddie Peralta, or definitely less than a Joe Ryan, who still has another year of team control, or Sandy Alcantara or something. But yeah, the Cubs also, they haven't gutted their farm system, but their farm system isn't as strong as it was the last couple of years, because they've traded guys like Owen Casey and Ronnie Cruz, and guys like Shaw and Ballesteros and Cade Horton have graduated, and they haven't really replaced them. So who do you guys feel comfortable trading? Like, we'll start with one guy. I feel like that a lot of people talk because they feel like he's an extra player, superfluous player in the lineup right now. But Matt Shaw, if he comes back from this wrist injury and he's healthy, Zoe, do you feel like the Cubs could deal Shaw, or even should deal Shaw for any move at the trade deadline this year?
I mean, if they do, like, I would hope that it's, a frontline starter, or a controllable starter, someone that you could get a lot of value out of. Because at this point, I mean, Shaw obviously he's not the starting third baseman anymore, but I think his bat is, pretty important when he's healthy. And he's also he's a pretty good utility player now, and he's a guy that is going to be really useful to the Cubs. So yeah, for him, it would definitely have, like, say, Joe Ryan or someone like that. That's like the price might be higher and you're willing to make that trade-off. But if it's not, then I don't really see. I mean, if the Cubs wouldn't give him up for, Mackenzie Gore, he's someone I don't really I see them holding on to him for sure.
Yeah, I
Shaw's
mean,
an,
he
I was gonna say
go ahead.
Shaw's an interesting one because yeah, I mean, like you look at the numbers right now, they don't jump off the page. Like you look at his baseball savant, it's not anything you're gonna write home about. But at the same time, looking into the couple years in the future, the Cubs potentially could be losing both their corner outfielders. Shaw is the modern day Ben Zobrist type where he can play every position on the diamond essentially. You can't just like diminish the value that provides. His sprint speed I think is damn near the same as PCA's. Uh like he's just a good player and he's only 24 years old. So you're right. If
Even
they're
though he
gonna
runs kind of like a squirrel or
he runs like a cat
whatever.
at the ground.
Yeah.
He just stomp the art. He just spiking as hard as he can every step he takes, but it works. I mean, he's fast as shit. So who am I to judge? But just going off what Zoe was saying, you're right. Like if they're gonna trade him, it's got to be you're not trading him for a Michael Soroka type pitcher.
Yeah.
I think you're getting a pitcher with at least another year of control. But how
Mhm.
does that even work? Say if like they trade for Joe Ryan, he has another year of control, but then there's a lockout next year. Is that like then he's a free agent and you're just like, oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is part of the equation, absolutely, Kyle, is like
Mhm.
if let's just say the worst case scenario, there is no baseball at all next year. Joe Ryan's a free agent after that. So the Cubs would have basically traded whatever for a rental. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be no baseball next year, but there may only be 4 months of a season. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be 100 games, 120 games, or they find a way to get all 162 in and then you feel better about it. But that is part of the equation for Jed and these other front offices at the trade deadline when you're acquiring guys who are controllable for next season and then become free agents after 27. So it's interesting. And the Shaw thing is he's not a starter right now on this team, maybe. But I would almost argue when it comes time for playoffs, unless Ballesteros is back, I think Seiya is your DH and Shaw is your right fielder in the playoff lineup. And then
Really?
Conforto can come in. Yeah, I mean, and I think Seiya just. I mean, you guys saw that throw the other night. Like
Oh, that was
Seiya
so
just
bad.
continues. It was bad, and like he makes some of those plays, and I think Seiya has been improved defensively this year. But to me, I still don't think that he's a guy that you would trust out there. Really, really, truly trust in right field in the playoffs. So I think Shaw, believe it or not, even though he's like never played outfield in his life before this year, I think could give you a better option and also gets him into the lineup. And I think, if not, maybe Seiya plays right and Conforto's like your DH against right-handed pitchers, which I think would be solid too. But I think Shaw's your right fielder moving forward, right? Like I think as Seiya and Hap are potentially hitting both or one of them are hitting the free agent market this offseason. I think Shaw's your first guy up in a corner outfield next year. So it's a really interesting idea of like who you would possibly trade. But real quick and kind of a quick answer, curious from you guys, this is something we brought up at CSGO the other day. Like going into the All-Star break, there's 4 games left. By the time you're listening to this, the Cubs may only have 3 games left with the early game on Thursday, but they're 6 back of the Brewers right now. Zoe, what number do you feel like would be most comfortable to you that you feel like the Cubs could catch the Brewers going into the All-Star break?
I would love for it to be like 3 or
Right.
4 games. Again, I mean, the Brewers have the Cardinals now, and then I think they have the Pirates next. The Cubs have the Reds after this. I mean, they could both just sweep, both of those series. I mean, even with the Cubs going 18-6, I think they still lost ground on the Brewers in that time span. So as long as the Cubs keep winning, I mean, there's really nothing they can do about the Brewers keeping winning. Again, yeah, they're 6 games back right now. It would be great if they could pull maybe two more back from them. But yeah, again, even now, I feel like they can, as long as they're winning, they can be happy with how they're winning and what they're doing now because they can't affect the whatever voodoo magic the Brewers are pulling out in in every single game they play.
Yeah,
So
they've
do you think Zoe that the division is realistic at all? Because we talk about the trade deadline, like that affects what the Cubs do. If they felt good about getting a bye and not having to play in the wild card round, they might be more inclined to go all in. I don't even know if a guy like Tarek Skubal is going to be available given the Tigers' recent surge. But if the Cubs are still 5-6 games back at the trade deadline, I don't see how you go all in because even if you're hosting, you're playing in a 3-game wild card.
Yeah, I mean, I think for them, the goal right now still it just has to be get the top wild card spot. I mean, I think that in itself would still be a pretty big achievement with everything that they've gone through with their pitching staff and whatnot this year. But I wouldn't say the division is necessarily a wash at this point, but it kind of feels like the way it did last year, where it's just like the Brewers can't stop winning and they're probably just not going to stop winning, barring any crazy losing streak they may have. But yeah, I think for the Cubs, it's probably top wild card spot like last year, and just try to go from there.
Yeah, because like Cleveland made I think 11 or 11 and a half games up last year in the final 2 months of the season, but they did that because Detroit collapsed. Like if the Cubs are 6 games is palatable, it's not. It's half of that total that Cleveland made up, but it doesn't. Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't feel like the Brewers are going to go through a Tigers like surge. So I mean, Kyle, how do you look at the division or how many games the Cubs are back going into the All-Star break or even into the trade deadline?
I guess the All-Star break I don't look at that as much as I look at more towards the trade deadline and then like later in August. I think if you're 3 to 4, like 4, honestly, I'd say like 4 to 5 games back heading into September, like it's realistic. Look at what the Brewers did in 2018 to the Cubs, right? Weren't the Cubs have a 5-game lead going into September, and obviously they lost in game 163 to the Brewers, but the likelihood of that actually happening, yeah, you want to be as close as possible. But I think within 5 games, you're at least within like striking distance. You're a good week for yourself and a bad week from your opponent away from, swapping spots. And correct me if I'm wrong, but don't the Cubs play the Brewers 7 times within the first like 10 days of September? Something like that. So
from August 31st over in 2-week stretch, they play the Brewers 7 times. So they
where's the
absolutely
4-game series at? Wrigley or
4 games at Wrigley, August 31st through September 3rd, and then in Milwaukee, September 7th, which I think is it's Labor Day, through September 9th.
But even just, the Cubs playing the Brewers, there's no confidence there. The Brewers they own the Cubs. Right? I know the Cubs took 2 of 3 the last time, but like they just have that voodoo magic. I don't even know how to describe it. Like they just have the Cubs number. So yeah, they have 7 games head to head, but it's like, you realistically see the Cubs going 5-2? Probably not. Right? Like if they went 4-3, hell, if they went 3-4, you'd be like, all right, not terrible. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of contradicting exactly everything I just said, but at the same time, maybe you do need to be a little bit closer since the Brewers have your number. So yeah, maybe it is the wild card spot.
Yeah. No, I think that will be interesting for sure. Because like you said, you go 4-3 over a 7-game stretch, you make up 1 game. If you're 5 games back, all of a sudden you have 3 weeks to play and you're only 4 back, or you're still 4 back. Like that seems difficult to do. But all right, before we wrap up here, we're gonna bring back That Guy Rocked. Zoe's first time playing this game. So I have the player, the former Cubs player, and I will give you guys clues, and you try to guess him. So any initial guesses, by the way?
Nafi Perez.
Who I'm thinking? No, that's a great guess, but no.
Ronnie Cedeno.
No. Zoe, any initial guess?
What era is this? Because
I definitely in your lifetime.
In my lifetime, I don't know. Felix Pierre.
No.
Oh, yeah, good one.
So first hint, which will help you guys a ton. I modeled my own personal batting stance off of this guy.
Okay.
He's a righty. I'm a righty.
So he's a righty.
Okay.
Yeah. He had a little bit of an open stance.
Is it Derek Lee?
Jeez, it is Derek Lee. I didn't think that was going to give it away that fast.
That's my favorite
I had a bunch of other clues coming up.
The only hesitation I had was that he's so obvious. I thought That Guy Rock was.
I didn't think. I didn't think that was going to be that obvious.
Model child for That Guy Rock.
I thought we were going like obscure.
Well, I was trying to go obscure, but then every time I've thought about the last few times, I'm like, I want to do Derek Lee so bad for this because to me, when you think about That Guy Rocked, like Derek Lee is That Guy Rocked, right? Like that 2005 season was one of my favorite seasons to watch. My next clue was going to be he's one of my all-time favorite players to watch and to just in general. he and Mark Grace, like Mark Grace was when I was growing up, and then Derek Lee was when I was in college and stuff. Like he was a lot of fun, a ton of fun to watch. Good
What
leader.
were all your clues?
Well, there was that. I was gonna say he had his best season with the Cubs was a 7-7 WAR. I was
That
gonna
would
say he
have
was a
given it away.
two-time All-Star.
Mhm.
I was gonna bring up the
Mhm.
05 season and say that he led in six major categories. He led the league in.
That would have
So
given it away.
I thought these were gonna like throw you guys off a little bit more, or at least make it more difficult. But I guess Kyle knows me too well, and the open stance thing was a more easy clue than I thought it was gonna be.
Zoe, if you could think of a random player, you could go real quick. You could just rattle
Oh
off.
God.
Felix
I
Piet.
don't have. Yeah, right. Felix Piet. I don't have stats to read off, but yeah, my favorite. I loved Terrio and Fontenot. Those are my that duo. That was
Oh,
that
that
guy
would be
rock duo.
I think maybe it was last year or 2 years ago when we did the softball game. I told Bruce I was the left-handed Ryan Terrio, and he just scoffed it. He was like, "Nobody's Ryan Terrio."
The left-handed Ryan Terrio is Mike Fine.
Exactly.
Which is funny because that's who I kind of would model my batting stance after.
Yeah, see, there you go.
And I wore number 17.
Yeah.
Oh,
Kyle, I think we've done like 25, I think, episodes of these. I think we brought up Mike Fontenot in at least like 5 or 6 episodes of the 25.
Oh, yeah.
Like one out of every
Oh,
5
yeah.
episodes we brought up Mike Fontenot. That's crazy.
I could
That
do
guy
it.
rock.
I could just do
That
a
guy
Mike
rocks.
Font. We definitely because we were talking about hot stretches, and then for some reason I brought up Mike Fontenot's June of 2007.
That he hit 400 in, right? Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, we'll make Mike Fontenot an answer to that guy rocked at some point in one of these future pods. But Zoe, thank you for filling in for Andy. We don't know where he's going on vacation next, so we may tap you in the future, Zoe. But thank you for hopping on. For Kyle and Zoe and Andy, wherever he is right now, I am Tony. Thanks as always for tuning in to the Windy City Breakdown. Stay tuned next week for another episode.